One of my favorite memories of Apex actually is the story of how I got here. I have to go all the way back to 1978, summer of 1978. I was living nearby in Chapel Hill and trying to finish up a graduate degree in city planning. And at the same time, hoping I was going to find a job soon because I was just broke. And so I was finishing up and saw that the town of Apex, had never heard of Apex, never had been there, wanted a town planner, and I said, wow, this could be great because this is close by Chapel Hill, and I'll go see about this. So I called to see, and it took a little while. It took a few calls to actually get an appointment to be interviewed for this job, because this sounded really intimidating a little bit to me, but I didn't understand at the time. When it's a small town, you only have so many people to do things like hire people and so forth. And this job, this town planner job, was actually considered by the town to be somewhat important position. Oh, well, that kind of amped it up a little bit for me. And in fact, it was so important that the governing body then was called the Board of Commissioners. They're the town council now. The governing body had a personnel committee. And this position was going to be interviewed, selected, hired by the town's personnel committee of commissioners. Wow, how about that? So I said, well, I better be ready for this. So anyway, I finally got the word, to come, and I was expecting him to say, well, come and meet us at the town hall, on a certain time. They said, no, we need you to meet us downtown at the Western Auto Store in downtown Apex. I'm going like, wow, this seems so unusual. Well, it turns out the reason that I had to meet there was the mayor of the town, Mr. James Austin, ran the Western Auto Store. He wasn't on the personnel committee, but as mayor, he thought this was a really important decision. So he wanted to be in on this, meet people that were being interviewed, and he couldn't leave the store. I mean, he kind of ran the place all by himself, So the committee was going to meet there in his store. Well, which was actually just a few blocks from where we're sitting right now. It was where the Western Auto Store was. And it was a very typical old-style Western Auto Store. If you'd ever been in one in the 50s and 60s, they sold everything. I mean, you think of auto parts, but, they had children's bicycles and the little red wagons, the Western Flyers, and all that kind of stuff. And he also sold furniture. And right there in the very front of the store, real close to where he was running everything, answering the phone or whatever, was this beautiful living room set of furniture that he had for sale. Well, committee showed up, and what did they do? Just sat right down there on that living room furniture that was for sale and asked me to sit in the side chair. They sat on the sofa, and I got interviewed by the town's personnel committee, one of which was, you've met or will meet, is Larry Jordan, who's on our committee for the 150. He's a former mayor. He wasn't the mayor then. He was a council or commissioner, went on to be mayor. So they interviewed me for this new town planner position. They hadn't had a full-time permanent town planner ever before. And it was really kind of interesting to me that I was all prepped and ready to talk about city planning, and all that. Asked hardly anything about city planning, any of that kind of stuff, all the stuff that I'd studied up for. No, they sort of talked to me about who I was and where I'd come from and my background, where I'd grown up, and talked about sports, and a little bit about, what was going on in the news, and, and what did I see when I drove through Apex, what had stood out to me, what did I find interesting? Just kind of chit-chatty kind of stuff, but not much about planning. So I'm thinking, well, look, they're not really talking about planning, so they've already figured out that, I'm fresh out of school, and they probably want somebody experienced and all that, so this is like going nowhere. So anyway, but they're real nice people, and I'm going to be nice too. So anyway, so we continued this on for a while. And after it kind of wound up, they all smiled and looked at me and basically gave me kind of the thumbs up that, yeah, I was going to be their guy. I was going to get this job. And, talk about my mouth just dropping open. So, of course, I got a chance to talk to some of them, later, like, well, we didn't really talk about planning, and, well, how did you decide that you thought I would work? And the thing that just really got me was they said, well, we think that you'll fit in here, that you've got a personality that will work with our people. You know, they'll like you and all that. And we also want someone who we think at the town will treat people nice, be, pleasant and get along and all that. Because we're a little worried, we haven't had a person doing this kind of thing, and it's going to be tough because you're going to have to tell people sometimes things they don't want to hear. But we think you can do that in a nice way. So we think you're our guy. Well, that was like such a validation to me, although nobody was telling me, boy, you're just the smartest city planner we've ever met. No, they're just saying, we think you're a nice person. And that's been something that's meant a lot to me here in Apex, is people being nice to each other and, treating each other well. And it's been the thing that's kept me here for 40 years now. So, yeah, anyway. Well, let me tell you what I think makes Apex home. It's a sense of community. It's a sense of belonging. And it starts right down in my neighborhood that I've been there, and I live around a collection of neighbors that are more than neighbors. They're some of my dearest friends, and we've lived through all kinds of things together. Children come, children go, and we've aged, but we've aged together, and we've had fun together, and we've looked after each other. Even to this day, I go out of town, they catch my newspaper. They go out of town, I feed their kitty cats. I mean, we look after, and they're just some of my dearest friends. And I'll just tell you, though, the truth is, time has gone by to the point that now, actually, the house I live in, my wife and I, it really doesn't fit our situation, our needs anymore. And we've talked so much about it, about, wanting to live in something different. But the problem is, I'm just not willing to give up my neighborhood and my neighbors and all the people that are around me. When I balance it out, well, I guess we're just going to stay there and enjoy that. And so I've got that sense of community that you have. And it goes beyond that. There's the churches, you have your church friends, and you have civic organizations here that are still, active. That's not as strong in other places, but Apex has quite a community of those. And you make friends and you do things together. But then I've got a whole set of what I call my work friends, although I've been retired 8 years, but I have a collection of people that I work with through the years that are still some of my dearest friends. And to the point that we get together every week. In fact, I have lunch every Monday with a group of my closest friends that all have a work connection with town of Apex in this case, because that's where I worked for 35 years. And so this Monday I had lunch with two former mayors, two former town commissioners, and then a friend of mine who's the retired public works director. But it's a different collection of folks, folks that work there, retired, and different things, and different elected officials, but people that I just kept up with through the years and talked to all along and try to look out for each other. One of them is a retired manager that I work for, who's 80-something now. He's up there, and he's a fellow that was good to me, very good to me, and I haven't forgotten it. And so I'm going to be there and help take care of him too. And I look forward to helping him get to that lunch and being with him every single week. And the rest of those folks too, they don't have those same needs, but I look forward to helping them because I know each and every one of them would help me if I needed it. Apex has really made the transition from being a really small little town that ran things kind of like a country store, I'll tell you, not a lot of rules, not a lot of people paying attention to exactly what was happening. You just kind of carrying things along from day to day. That was a lot like it was when I found Apex in the late 1970s. The town only had about 2,500 people total. Can you just imagine 2,500 versus 70,000 now? I mean, think of all the Apexes that have been built side by side by side that now make up, the mass that is all of Apex. But and the town as an organization only had about 40 employees. You could really easily know every employee that worked for the town of Apex. You could know their wife and kids. You could know their dog. I'm telling you, every very, very close-knit bunch. And there was a lot of important work. The basic things that we do right here today for 70,000 people, making sure that they're protected by a police force, that they're protected by a fire department, that someone's going to come and pick up your trash. Now, you can't get more important than that. I'll tell you, it's been told to me over and over. Make sure that you've got some safe, drinkable water, and then remove what you do with it from your property. All those things that we're doing an excellent job, I think, with all of those things. And I can even add to the other thing that's very unusual about Apex. Electricity. That's right. We are the distributors of the electric here in this area. But we did all those things with 40 employees in the late 70s. Now, I don't think we did them nearly as well as we do it today. I think we do it a lot better today. And I'd be the first to say that, even though I was greatly responsible for the quality of what we were doing right back then, we're doing it better. And one of the things you learn in working in local government is that sometimes you kind of have to do things wrong before you do it right, because you learn from your mistakes. And we made plenty of them, but nevertheless, we were a group of people, I think that small group, that in their heart wanted to do better, wanted to serve people, wanted to make this a very livable, enjoyable place. And over time, I think we've done that. We've grown as an organization. The organization in itself has gotten a lot more sophisticated. There was no real central executive authority, a town manager, when we first got there. But over time, we changed the form of government and had the town manager form of government, which was a better system. Instead of, a dozen Indian chiefs, you just really need one, to keep the focus in the right direction. So that was good. And of course, they changed a little bit, the shift from Board of Commissioners to Town Council. It's really a little more cosmetic, but the thing that happened there is that there was a step by the elected officials, kind of a step away from being involved in the day-to-day management of the town, turn it over to professionals, to do their job. But to do that, you've got to have a workforce that you've got confidence in that can do that. And the good thing about the elected officials here in Apex that they were good in terms of rewarding people that did a good job. They were always appreciative, and they were good to employees. Employee pay, employee benefits have always, been a little bit better than average here in Apex. A lot of it was because, they used to watch a thing where, we would train up people, and they were doing really good, and then they got hired away from us, and they said, well, we're not going to let that happen. So I think it was kind of a good thing. You trained up good people, you retained them by rewarding them, and we've had a long history of generous elected officials that worked hand in glove with a workforce absolutely dedicated to providing the best in public services. And all those services I mentioned have grown and gotten better. They're all doing a much better job. The water that we deliver today is a much higher quality product than it used to be. It's hard for people to imagine that there was a time, if they go out to Apex Community Park, beautiful little park, has a nice lake in the middle of it, that was the town's water source. That giant mud puddle out there was the workforce. And when they park in that parking lot on Lake Pine Drive to go to the park, in that parking lot was where a 1926 vintage water plant stood, making all the water for the town. Not very high quality water came out of there, but it worked. The town made a great partnership with our neighbors next door in Cary, build a water plant together. We share, and of course we have very high quality water because of that. Sort of a similar story with dealing with wastewater, some cooperation, some sharing. We're doing a much better job of protecting water quality, being good stewards of the environment. I think because of that. And in fact, I think, honestly, I know I'm prejudiced a little, not objective of this, but I think we do a really great job on an environmental level. And it's actually a real sticky point, because if you're ever going to listen to, the discussion about what could we do better, environmental issues are at the top of the list. But I'll tell you, if you look at what Apex has done in terms of protecting water quality, in terms of what we do in terms of stormwater management in this town, in terms of what we do in terms of setting aside resource conservation areas, what we do in terms, and best to try to save trees, protect trees, and when we lose trees, mitigate with replantings. We're really at the top of the list. I mean, if you went all over the state of North Carolina, our neighbors in Cary do a good job with that. Our friends over in Morrisville. You can go down in the Charlotte area, Huntersville. There's some, there's a few communities that are really at the top of the list. But we're right there. We're definitely top tens in terms of good stewards of the environment. Can we do better? Absolutely. And I know that that's what will happen. It will get better. I've just watched it head in that direction in virtually every area you can bring up. But so if you look ahead and you say, where do we want to go? Where do we want to be? Well, we're on that pathway. We want very comfortable, livable, walkable neighborhoods, such as we're building all around here, with great connections to community parks and amenities where people can enjoy. I think that when we start talking about growth, there's a lot of this angst over growth, no growth. Well, I think really it's always been my issue is the quality of the growth, and I guess I approach it a little bit different in that I want us to be an accommodating community, a welcoming community. I want us to have the open arms, the idea of not wanting more people, closing it down, that growth is bad, or somehow like that. I mean, I just don't like that attitude at all. I think we should, as our friends of faith would say, welcome the stranger and be accommodating. And that is the kind of community that I want us to be. And I can't help but say those people are coming here because they've looked this place over and they see it too, that this is the place you want to be, you want to live, you can be happy here, you can have a nice family life, and just a general contentment. This is a place to call home.